Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
We made it through thick and thin, fire and brimstone, up every mountain, climbing the tallest trees. We have made it to episode 50. So, we recently had the 2-year milestone and now episode 50. Do you have anything to mark the occasion?
Maybe I should have a beer. That would be a good idea. But maybe I'll have a beer.
Do you have any Heineken handy?
Good alliteration. Not today.
Darn. Well, speaking of, battling the elements, it's literally storming outside at the moment, and about 5 minutes before I jumped in the booth to record this, I was dragging the trampoline across the lawn against the strong wind and chaining it to the neighbour's fence. So it's I feel like it's like the Twister, getting to the bunk style action. So
yeah, you don't want that going over the neighbour's fence. Rather chain to the neighbour's fence than going over or through.
The thing is, that's because it has done before. That's why I'm so wary of it. But anyway, that's all good, and we're ready to roll. So, speaking of the opposite of things continuing, we're going to cover some things that are ending. AirPort. The stale AirPort product lineup that's just been sitting in Apple stores, sitting on the website, hasn't been touched for years. They have finally made the decision to discontinue it. We knew that they disbanded the AirPort team from back in November 2016, but they've made the official announcement. But rather than, cutting it all out straight away or anything, it's pretty much like, we're not going to make any more, so once the stock goes, that's it. If anyone's unfamiliar with this is the AirPort Express, AirPort Extreme, and the AirPort Time Capsule. Now, the Extreme and the Time Capsule both have the latest mainstream Wi-Fi, being 802.11ac, whereas the Express has the 802.11n. Do you think anyone is going to rush out and buy one as a way of having a collector's item?
Anyone, probably a few people, but I don't think more than 100 people in the world would do that. Probably only like people who have basically every single Apple product, but in which case they probably already bought it by now. So I don't know. I don't think so.
I think the AirPort lineup would have been fine had they actually decreased the price as time went on. The fact that it's just sat there so from Express, Extreme to Time Capsule is $149, $299, and then $419 for 2TB and $569 for 3TB, respectively. You can get the equivalent for a lot cheaper, that's for sure. Luckily for me, I really love my 3TB Time Capsule because I got it on eBay last year for $320. So compared to a $569 new, I feel like $320 is where the new price should be sitting at. Funnily enough, this kind of raises the question, how often were they actually needing to manufacture them, do you think?
There are two possible things here, right? Where it's either that they haven't manufactured them in a long time and have really just been dragging it out and want to just get rid of whatever's left and hoping that by announcing this, that it's discontinued, that there'll be that second spike or final spike, or that they just keep on manufacturing and have been, manufacturing a couple of hundred per week and then just decided, well, this is our final manufacturing run and let people know that when these sell out, well, that's it. So I think it's more they had them for longer than they hoped they would and then just decided, okay, let's have an announcement and get rid of the final stock, similar to the Thunderbolt display a while ago.
My bet is they probably stopped manufacturing them when they disbanded the AirPort team, and they've just had enough stock just dwindling away. So they're probably at low enough levels now that they can actually make the announcement. But at least it kind of, gives us some closure because it's a will they, won't they. And then now it's dragged on so long, people are like, well, clearly and obviously disbanding the team, clearly Apple have pulled out of this space.
But you have to wonder what the team did between when they made these devices 4 years ago and then when the team got disbanded last year. Like, did they not make anything, or did they not make anything worth releasing? It's just a bit weird.
They're probably the AirPlay 2 team, and they're just not very, very productive.
Yeah.
Okay, so with modern equivalents, there are mesh systems, and obviously Nick is very familiar with this because you yourself have Google Wi-Fi. My house currently isn't quite large enough to really warrant having a mesh system. Of course, there's areas where the signal might drop a little bit, so it could be an advantage, but I'm not rushing out to buy one. Apple have then, upon this announcement, their solution was basically they're selling in the Apple stores the Linksys Velop Tri-Band. So it's available in a 2-pack and 3-pack for $550 and $700, which is still price level. Not everyone's going to rush out and get one, right? So Velop themselves, Linksys themselves, have announced the Velop Dual Band just recently, which is available in single, double, and triple packs. I'd assume that this would make it to the Apple Store pretty soon after. With Apple pushing this alternative, like how they pushed the LG Display alternative, but we all know how that panned out. What's been your experience with Google Wi-Fi? Because to me, that seems like the most obvious choice in terms of something that I'd be interested in getting over the Linksys ones.
I love Google Wi-Fi. I've had pretty much no issues with it since I got it. It has really good coverage, a completely useless letterboxed app on the iPhone 10, but the system itself is actually good, and I would highly recommend it to anyone. Unfortunately, I don't have more than one at the moment, so I can't really comment on its mesh networking capabilities.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought that you had a couple of them.
Oh, yeah. No, I just have one for now, but it covers my whole place seamlessly, and most impressively, it delivers the 100 megabits to all my devices. It's pretty good with simultaneous connections and also prioritizing certain connections. So you can set a priority for a certain device for a certain amount of time or indefinitely. So if you say, for example, predominantly on your iPad and you're noticing it's a little bit of a slowdown, or if you have kids and they're hogging the Wi-Fi, well, prioritize yours and you can get the full speed. So I think that's really cool. And they do have other good features for parents. Not being a parent yet, I don't actually know how I feel about heavy emphasis on parental controls, but I have through my cousins seen that parents do want that, and Google Wi-Fi offers some really great child management functions.
Some form of management.
Yeah.
It's funny because it reminds me of the whole, I'll give you 3 warnings, or once I count to 3 sort of thing. So it's like you threaten them with the slow Wi-Fi, and then if they don't respond to that, then no Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So got a couple of stages there. So I think once this announcement was made, they should have just lowered the prices as a way to get rid of the stock. It just actually does seem ridiculous to me. And I know that obviously we're both big Apple enthusiasts, but this sort of thing, like with the iPad mini, they really just need to do a bit of a price check, let's say. So some of these old items that are just hanging around that have no obvious future yet, or there's been no real hint apart from Apple saying, we still value this device. Yeah, I think a price cut would certainly seem fair. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, absolutely. They should have done a price cut. But the thing is, to what? Because they obviously don't want to broadcast their margins. And so it becomes a bit of if we just sell them at cost and get rid of them, then that becomes clear. So I don't approve, but I can sort of start understanding why, or seeing that they have some reasons, even if I don't agree with them.
Yeah, I think even if it was just like a $100 drop or something where it's still, it's not at cost per se, but it still seems like a way that they could sort of accelerate the sales of these. But anyway, I guess the final point on this is I haven't actually completely written them off from the Wi-Fi router space. We saw this with the Thunderbolt display. We know there is one coming after they sort of had essentially given us the idea that they weren't doing it anymore. Would you rule them out of the Wi-Fi router space yet?
Well, what was the wording in this announcement? Because I get with the Thunderbolt display, as you say, they'd given us the impression, but that was through a single Apple rep telling Nilay in an offhand comment that, Apple was not in the display market anymore. This, as far as I recall, the wording was much more clear that they had discontinued the product lineup. And so I don't hold out any hope for it returning.
They discontinued the AirPort lineup, but could they return with a different name?
Oh,
maybe.
Man. Well, the thing is, everything else
Space
is
Station.
I don't know. They're keeping the airline for other things. They've got the AirPods. They've got AirPower. Why? Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah. Anyway, it's the typical scenario. I hold out hope, and then you're just like delivering it at a real level. Speaking of levels, increasing levels, entering the apple tree here, and we want to talk about the just today announced Q2 2018 results. So, Nick, I'll hand over to you to give us a bit of a breakdown as to what Apple have been selling and at what level.
Yeah, it's there's always a lot to unpack with Apple earnings, and especially this one feels like there's been a massive emphasis on Apple being doomed. We know that this has been the case for the last 20 years, but usually I'm able to ignore it. But the iPhone 10 disappointment has come across my Twitter feed quite a lot, and so these were much anticipated. So top line, $61.1 billion in revenue, $13.8 billion in profit, and this was from 52.2 million iPhones, 9.1 million iPads, and 4.07 million Macs. So as far as I recall, the iPhones were up 2%, a couple of percent, and iPads also up a couple of percent, and then Macs down 2%. So, I can hardly think that growing iPhone numbers, and especially strong growing iPhone revenue, are failures, but yeah, I think there was an uptick in Apple stock because the naysayers were drowning out the people with realistic expectations for the stock price recently. So I think these are pretty decent earnings, especially that the average selling price went up. But anyway, Apple projects a revenue between 51.5 and 53.5 billion for 2018 Q3. So I'd have to go back and have a look at what 2017 Q3 is. And sometimes these projections help us realize whether they expect new products to be launched. So just having a look there in the discrepancy, obviously $2 billion is quite a wide margin. Not when you're talking about 50 billion, but yeah, it's 4%. Which I think is quite a high margin. So that might indicate the uncertainty around the uptake of new products. So I'm thinking about certainly the AirPower Max that we know has to be coming in the next few months.
Yes.
And so that could lead to that. And then other things like a new iPad and such. So yeah, hopefully that we do see the top side of that as a result of some good products. But yeah, Tim Cook obviously knows that the market's been looking out for what the iPhone 10 sales numbers have been. And so he said that customers chose iPhone 10 more than any other iPhone each week in the March quarter, just as they did did following its launch in the December quarter. So when I first read this, I was like, oh, just each week in March. And then I just continued reading and it was like, oh, March quarter. So, every single week, iPhone 10 is the top selling iPhone. And we know that is likely also the top selling phone worldwide. So I don't understand demand is low. It's like, no, obviously there will be a peak when it's newly announced and then they reduce orders throughout the year until the new model comes out. So it's just crazy that people think that reducing orders is a number, is like it gives you information. It's just completely rubbish. Anyway, so Tim Cook also said this is the first cycle in which the top of the line iPhone model has also been the most popular, which I find very, very surprising. But I suppose he's thinking top of the line as being distinct between the iPhone 7 Plus and 7. So he would probably be referring to iPhone 7 always outsold iPhone 7 Plus, and 6S and 6S Plus, 6 and 6 Plus. So, those were pretty much a preference thing between larger displays, and for a lot of people, I think the de facto is the size, the sort of 4.7 inch shape, like iPhone 10 and 8. So it's not entirely surprising, but it's just that there's a big difference between the iPhone 8 and 10. So yeah, it does show that it is. I mean, people love it as the customer satisfaction is. And I know people who don't like Apple think that customer satisfaction is rubbish, but at the end of the day, it's how happy you are with your product that you spend your money on, and not what someone tells you need to be interested in. So 99% of people who spend their own money on this device love it, which means that they are comparing the value inherently in that. They are looking at it and saying, this money came out of my pocket, and I'm not, like 99% of people are happy with that. It's not, tech reviewers who get 30 phones and can look at stats,
yes.
and when you're spending your real money on it and you're still happy with it, that to me tells a real story. And I think Walt's tweet speaks to this. So he said, this is obviously Walt Mossberg, the famed journalist who covered Apple in his career for a long time. Here's some context on iPhone sales. In just the last 2 quarters, the iPhone alone has garnered nearly $100 billion in revenue for Apple. For comparison, another tech giant doing well, Microsoft, took in $90 billion in revenues for its entire business in its full fiscal 2017.
That was staggering.
It's crazy because one of Apple's products, just one of their products, keeping in mind that they say services were at Fortune 100 and wearables are Fortune 300. So, when people say that, anyway, so I'll continue on Walt's tweet, because in that thread, he also mentioned that all he knows is that he loves his iPhone 10 still, right? And I think that also speaks to that customer satisfaction. So on Apple's other category, it hit nearly $4 billion in revenue. Stuff that goes in there: AirPods, Apple Watch, HomePod, Beats, iPod Touch, and Apple TV. Well, I have said Apple TV is $1 billion business before. So anyway, that's up 38% year over year. It's just completely being ignored, this massive business Apple is building behind the scenes. Other massive businesses, tech giants build, like Facebook's AI and Google's AI, Amazon's AI and AWS. That stuff all gets watched and put into the stock. They're completely ignoring this growing business, which is now the size of a Fortune 300 company, and wearables specifically Fortune 300, and they grew 50% year over year.
Yeah, that's amazing. I absolutely love that stat there. Yeah, it's really exciting.
I find it interesting they call Beats wearables. Like, I get that there are wearables, but
you wear it, so
So but AirPods and Apple Watch, I think, is the real killer combo that Apple sells there. And they're not going to grow the iPhone at the pace it grew in the early 6 and 6S days, but you have to realize that it's a maturing market. Look at all the cell phone makers or smartphone makers aren't growing at the rate that they have before, and it's just that Apple has now decided to squeeze money out of other places, and people are completely ignoring that. Their services are growing, their wearables are growing. It's So I'm, as an Apple watcher, increasingly I'll be looking to those secondary businesers more and more, because that's what really makes the ecosystem for me. I'll get into it a bit later when we discuss some other things, but there's definitely more to Apple products than just the iPhone. Apple's success.
Very impressive results here. Very encouraging. I just love that when they release something like this, it just completely quashes all those iPhone 10 is slow, Apple is doomed. Even though they'll always come out and they're consistent and they seem to be peaking at the moment across all sort of tech sites and and people that sort of claim themselves to be, tech leaders and spokespeople, Mark Gurman. I'm as I said, I'm really excited by it. And particularly speaking about the watch, it'd be interesting to see when it actually they break the watch out of the other category. Do you think they'd ever reach that point?
Yeah, in a number of years, sure. I think they will reach that point. I think they will try and hang on to that for as long as they can, but ultimately, Apple Watch is growing successfully, and when the market demand, as in the analyst demand, gets big enough, I think they will break it up.
Yes. Well, that segues us into the water cooler. Speaking of analysts, Ming-Chi Kuo has left KGI. So you've sometimes heard us refer to KGI, and they basically always have a direct involvement with any rumours we discuss. Not all of them, but a majority of them. So who are they? They're Taiwan's second largest security firm. And so Ming-Chi Kuo was the major Apple analyst at KGI, and he's now leaving after 6.5 years. He also previously worked at DigiTimes, which we've also referenced before. His main thing he's been pushing over the past, I don't know how many months now, it's been a fair while, is the rumour of this third model 6.1-inch LCD iPhone that somehow physically sits in size between an iPhone 10 and a rumoured iPhone 10 Plus, but it's a cheaper model, but it's LCD, but then it's still got the iPhone 10 style shape with a notch. Didn't think that was achievable with LCD. I know it's all very up there at the moment. Now people like Mark Gurman at Bloomberg really love having people around like Ming-Chi Kuo, because Ming-Chi Kuo has his own sources, and then I guess people like Mark Gurman that use Ming-Chi Kuo as their source. So we're not so much interested in the guy himself, but what this actually means for the constant acceleration and turning over of Apple's rumours. So do you think him leaving, do you think has any relation to Apple's recent crackdown on leaks?
No, I don't think so. I think it's probably just related to wanting to do something different. There could also be that there could be a whole host of reasons. Another reason could be that KGI doesn't reward him for finding these things that are unique, and so wanted to get out of that space. But then he might have stayed in the Apple sphere, just gone somewhere else. If that was the case, maybe he's just gotten bored with it, because he has, I think it was 6 years, was it? So yeah, he's been there a while, and I don't know. I think there are always a number of reasons, but another reason being thrown out was maybe one of his supply guys left. One of his major sources might have moved on too, and that might be as a result of Apple's crackdown or not. So yeah, it's hard to tell, but either way, it kind of excites me a little bit, because I don't want to forever be spoiled what I'm going to be getting. Like with WWDC, it's always more exciting because software is very close. They hold that card close to their chest. So yeah, I'm actually a little bit excited to be wowed again.
Yeah, it's certainly going to cut back on just all these articles, and then all the other sites that pick up this information and kind of peddle the same articles. So in a way, it's going to increase excitement for us because there's more mystery there, and it'll probably clean up our social feeds a little bit. I would be interested to see who would be sort of scrambling to be the replacement for him. That kind of jumps ahead to a question I had in an upcoming section, but we'll cover it now. So what's your actual stance on like leakers and supply chain rumors overall? Because would you rather not have them exist at all and be sort of completely in the dark, or be reading about people's speculation based on just, Apple's history? Or do you like the fact that there is kind of, we can find out about this stuff earlier, even though the amount of reliability of these sources can vary greatly?
I would be lying if I said I am always avoid spoilers. Very often I actually actively seek spoilers for all sorts of things. For Apple products, it is why I've kept so close to the news, and a whole TV shows and movies and everything like that. So it's not that it's inherent in me to not like these things being spoiled, but at the same time it gets a bit much having to keep up with every single thing. Like I would like to know, hey, new iPhone coming in March instead of September this year, and maybe make a change in buying decision on that. But to have every single nuance of the product leaked it gets a bit much. And I just think, like, especially when they're wrong and just keep on, just throwing out random stuff, I think there's just become like this whole secondary market to nonsense things. And that's sort of where I draw the line. In terms of what I actually think of leakers, is quite tough, because you have to understand from the employee's point of view, and a lot of stuff happens where businesses give a customer facing point of view, and when there's a point of view back at the company, like let's say Apple killing, not enabling flash or killing the headphone jack, right? They might say, okay, forward facing, this is our marketing on the headphone jack, but back at the company, there's some debates on, should we have killed it? And is it, user hostile, whatever. But this certain thing, I've seen a lot of Apple employees be actively upset about leaks, like on Twitter and stuff, with the iOS 11 GM leak. And a lot of people were really disappointed, and they spent a lot of time honing their products. And, I know the select few that get selected to actually go on stage and represent their team, there's a lot of pride in those people and in the devices that they've worked on and services that they've worked on. So there's a lot that happens there that leaks can spoil. So I've started trying to understand that more and sort of align more with that thinking. It's just like, okay, someone's hard work has gone into this and then just been ruined. Like, they weren't given the opportunity to tell people about that. So when someone in their team ruins it for them, it's kind of like, well, you're not playing with the team. But supply chain leakers, like, they're not part of Apple's core. They are, just they're building the device. They never involved in the conception. They're not involved in the sale. They just put it together, and so what is the incentive for them to actually give a hoot about these people who spend their lives working on it? So you can understand from their point of view, hey, make a few $1,000s on leaking this, yay.
And because of supply chain rumors, that's how you end up with things like the non-existent blush gold iPhone 10. So that's never exactly came to fruition, even though everyone was bagging on something that hadn't actually been released yet. But yeah, I certainly agree with you. I myself too have, particularly with the iOS 11 GM leak, while we did divulge details of that right before the event, I certainly made it, tried to stress the importance of the fact that if you don't want to be spoiled, don't listen to this. Of course, we're just gathering data from other, big tech news sources as well. So, we are not given anything directly. We are merely, Apple tech enthusiasts that are discussing the things that are all happening in the Apple world. I'm on a similar page to you, where basically I like to have something to discuss, to speculate on, but once there is just that overload of certain sites or certain columnists reading into things too much, or coming up with their own silly assumptions about things, and then using that as a headline, as a way to drive clicks and everything, that's what frustrates me the most about all this. It's like the Apple have consistently had to cover the fact that they got to, crack down on, double down on secrecy, crack down on leaks and such, and yet it just still seems to be increasing. So it's like the harder Apple are tightening their hold on it, the more that people are trying to scramble together stories and stuff to kind of justify the existence of their website or whatever they're doing. Yeah,
because it becomes like a numbers game for them. They're watching the clicks, and we'll peddle those stories while they get those clicks. So yeah, we speak about news we find interesting, and sometimes that's a rumor and sometimes it's a review, but ultimately it's what we find interesting and is always in the public space by the time we get it.
With the exception of cool ones like the recent iOS 12 concept that I had iUpdate OS on for the Bonus Byte episode and stuff like that, I'm kind of getting really sick of seeing like 3D renders and that. I used to be quite excited by it, but now they're just being churned out and they're getting more unrealistic. So
I don't even know if it's gotten worse over time. I remember a time, I used to work at Apple third-party retailer in South Africa, and I remember so many people coming into the store asking me about the next iPhone that was going to have the projector screen and projector keyboard. Like, oh, is it going to have the keyboard on your table projecting? And, there are just so many people, more people than you can imagine, watched these YouTube videos and genuinely thought that was really what Apple was going to be doing. And there was some really unrealistic stuff. There was the wraparound display on the iPhone 5 shape. So the whole sides were display, and liquid metal. I remember the liquid metal iPhones, and wow, some really, really weird things, and people took it really seriously. So I think I just got good at avoiding man, because some of them are ridiculous.
I appreciate the work that goes into the ones that are of high quality. But yeah, I've kind of, reached my peak of actually being really interested in them. So yeah, if people actually take the time to put in what they think is a realistic vision of something that's to come, and not something that's just crazy rumors or whatever, such as, everyone's like, this is what the redesigned iPhone SE is going to look like, and it's like a even thinner bezeled iPhone 10. It's like, do you possibly believe they're going to put the top end design and top end features into an iPhone SE shape and still maintain a lower price cost? It's ridiculous. Anyway, something to switch it around is we have a bit of a good news story. So this is involving the Apple Watch. There was a report on Tampa Bay, so Florida's ABC News. 18-year-old Deanna Rechtenwald, she had her resting heart rate rocket to 190 BPM, so her Apple Watch alerted her. Now, she, at the time, only had minor symptoms of a headache and being a bit short of breath. Now, her mum, who's a registered nurse, took her immediately to a walk-in clinic. The clinic confirmed her heart rate reading was spot on, and she was rushed straight to emergency. So doctors within emergency discovered that Deanna was suffering from chronic kidney disease and had experienced kidney failure, with hers only running at 20% capacity. If your watch is urging you that you have a higher than normal heart rate, don't ignore it, please. So, this has been addressed. Her mum then wrote a letter, which I've found interesting, that she wrote a physical letter to Tim Cook, and she got a reply, and then Tim Cook tweeted about it. So, hey, Apple Watch health features are there for a reason. They do more and more in this space, and just stories like this show that the the life-saving advantage of having an Apple Watch. I'm not saying it's going to give you superpowers, but if it can alert you to things like this, hey, that's only good news.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as you say, don't ignore the notifications. Obviously, if you're a bit of a nervous person, you're going on a first date and your heart rate spikes up a little bit, maybe that's normal, right? And maybe Apple Watch didn't know. But if you're not going for a run, you're just sitting on your couch and, completely relaxed and get a spiked heart rate, investigate it, because the Apple heart rate monitor is extremely accurate. So, people saved quite a few lives, and I always enjoy seeing these stories because it speaks to, more than some random stupid spec and why that spec is better. Android is more open, or for more advanced people who know how to use their computers. Like, no, look at this, saving lives.
Yeah, exactly. It is great.
The letter part is funny.
Yeah, that is quite funny.
Yeah.
She must be pretty old school, but
it's like an Apple Watch saved your child's life, but you wrote a physical
letter. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Interestingly, I was actually surprised that I didn't get an alert like this when I was doing the iPhone 10 pre-order, because my ears were on fire at the time, and I'm sure that I don't know. Well, at least I don't have any chronic conditions, but
your heart couldn't beat faster because all your blood was stuck in your ears.
They were hot, like literally. Take my word for it. But anyway, okay. So this last little bit on the rumor mill, iPhone SE 2. We've been speaking about it for ages, on again, off again. I'm expecting it to hopefully just drop sometime soon, so it can be done and dusted. And some photos have arisen. So can you tell us about this?
Yes, so on the topic of leaks, I think we think this is important because we kind of have had differing views and thoughts about this. And, once the photos are out, it becomes not really up for debate anymore, not much left for debate. The photo was of a white iPhone SE with a glass back, which is visually quite appealing, and it still has a 3.5mm jack for those people who care. And I think a lot of people will care at this price range, because upgrading when you only have $400 to spare is obviously your focus on the phone. And then we are obviously expecting upgraded internals. What those exactly will be interesting. It's likely it'll be an A10. And that is still a perfectly powerful processor, and and probably a really good camera. We can probably expect the one from the iPhone 7 at least. So hopefully it comes in the next couple of days, as we covered last time. And this was on the Eurasian, or we think these were on the Eurasian filings, so those are always pretty accurate, a couple of weeks out. So let's see. Hopefully it comes out soon.
So looking at it, do you think it looks pretty legit?
I had taken a look before, and I did like it. I'm gonna open it up quickly just to affirm my stance on it. What do you think?
Well, design wise, it aligns more with what you were saying, in the way that they could just keep the same design, essentially same materials, and it's not too much of a big deal to upgrade the internals, right? But give it that refresh by having the glass back, similar to what they did with basically the difference between iPhone 7 to iPhone 8. So no rounded edges, certainly no micro bezels or notches or anything like that we saw in crazy concepts, but pretty much mostly along the lines of what you were saying, but with the addition of, essentially, I'd assume, wireless charging because of the glass back.
Do you know what I like most about it?
What's up?
This is now looking at it, it's reminded me. It reminds me of the iPhone 4S look, or the 4 look, the iPhone 4 in white. It's just so, if iPhone 4 or 4S was your first iPhone, I can imagine that, there's a bit of nostalgia here because it looks so similar. I love it though.
I would like it if they offered this, like in the photo. So white glass back, it's got the aluminium edge and an all black front. I reckon that could be pretty cool.
So we haven't seen the front.
Well,
what color do you think the front will be?
Well,
white.
let's just assume that it's white, and then they got a black version as well. It'd be cool if they had a black front, but still with the white back, a la what you get with my iPhone 10. Yeah, possibly. It might be a bit too panderish, but yeah.
I don't think it will happen, but it would be certainly interesting.
If it doesn't come out soon, I don't even know what to believe anymore.
Well, we've seen the gold iPhone 10 and then the gold iPhone SE 2. It would be kind of like Apple's just trolling us at this point.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gold HomePod. Oh, jeez. Oh, that would be so funny if they're just putting stuff out, like they've put people on these things to work on them and just say, okay, well, we're going to just make that one a rumor. And
if it was a gold HomePod, would the mesh be like a beigey color, or would it be like a light tan, or
or like a shiny gold, like something really tacky.
No, HomePod edition, and it's actually a hard metal mesh made of real gold.
Yeah, real gold thread. No, like thread. So it's not hard. It's like gold thread.
And it's like $300,000 or something.
Johnny Ive will be the only one to own one. Yeah.
Yes, cool. Okay, so this brings us to the end of episode 50, and we just want to acknowledge basically listeners who have taken their time to review us. So, Nick, you had something to say about this?
Yeah, so we've received quite a few reviews now. We've had 2 different feeds. All up, I think we had 12 reviews, of which 2 were 4-star and 10 were 5-star. So, obviously, I think it's important to note on episode 50 that this podcast was literally just started on a whim, from a Twitter conversation, and, neither of us had done a podcast before. And so, it initially started with, I guess I thought that like 10 people would listen, right? So the fact that we have like way more than that listening now, and people actually who we have not directly ever met or spoken to or shared with, are coming across our podcast and have things to say about it is really, really, like interesting and heartwarming. And it's just, like, it's great. I love reading what people think because everyone has been really kind and nice. The thing, though, is that we obviously know, like, our views in and out, right? We live with them and we've spoken 50 times on the podcast. So coming across, just like one, I can get that we obviously love our Apple products, right? I love every one of mine. The thing is, we make no qualms about it being just like our opinion show and covering things that we're interested in. But the thing that I do think is important is that we do always keep an eye on what's out there. I obviously do own Google Wi-Fi, I own Google Home. I've looked at the Pixel. The thing that really I was like, when I looked at the Pixel, I was like, yeah, it's a pretty good phone and really good camera. Maybe, it's worth having a Switch. And then I thought, okay, I've got an Apple Watch, which I love. I could not do without my Apple Watch. I could not do without my iPad. So now basically, I would just get the phone as like, at the very least, something to work with them. So it becomes like this ecosystem that just works so beautifully for me, right? But it works for me. And so I just like love telling people how amazing it is for me and my situation. And, Google Home has been a massive letdown and really good, but I love my HomePod. So, ultimately, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, this is definitely my opinion, and you should always look at what fits in with your world, and that might be cross-platform across every different one of your different devices, and that is awesome. And I guess I just love mine. So this is what I will have. Like that's what I'll have to say is come from this really favorable point of view.
And I'm sure there's Google fan equivalent podcasts. And the more that Google push their own ecosystem, particularly with things like making Pixel Buds only work with Pixel phones, etc., it's the same thing. It's like, as you pointed out, you didn't go and switch to go get a Pixel because everything's tied into your Apple ecosystem. But it's not like you're frustrated with that. It was just a case of like, oh yeah, that does look nice, but obviously the iPhone is top performing as we've financially for Apple, but a leading smartphone amongst Android competitors as well. And we have taken the time to address things like Google I/O event twice now. Last year as well, having my friend Jared on there, who appreciates Apple design, but is very much an Android guy. And we had a friendly little conversation about that. Didn't get nasty at all. So, we can coexist together. We are, as you said, this is our opinion. We are obviously Apple fans, but we have called out areas where we think that Apple can change, particularly just early in this episode about, yes, they should have dropped the prices for the AirPort. So, yeah, overall, very much appreciate the fact that you've taken time to come and put a review in. I know that podcasters are always urging people for reviews. A lot of them seem to think that reviews are the only metric for a successful podcast. I don't think so, but I definitely encourage people to do that. So yes, if you have the Apple Podcast app or if you're using iTunes, please go in and drop us a review. Let us know if there's a particular episode that you liked. And also, just with the recent bonus bite on Breaker, if you've given that a go, you can actually comment on individual episodes and it will timestamp the comments. So you can start a bit of conversation there as well. All right. So, yeah, we've reviewed the reviews, reviewception as such. If you would like to subscribe to Apple Size Podcasts, you can search in Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Breaker, Stitcher, Spotify, and many other players. Of course, in between episodes, we are posting to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. There's an Australian Apple Fans Facebook group too, tied to the page if you want to join that. But ultimately, and we've mentioned several times, but if there's any new listeners, which network are we part of, Nick?
Ozcast Network. That's AUScastnetwork.com. I always spell it out because I know that if I just say it in my South African accent, it's a bit hard to hear, but Ozcast Network.
Plus, some people might put the OZ, like OZ cast or whatever. Yep. And we are one of 26 podcasts in total, and they have plenty more in the pipeline. So it's a growing network. It's cool to discover other podcasts, and we can sort of talk about, I myself talk with the guys from Jaeger Day about, what it's like being on Ozcast and that sort of thing. And, I listen to their episodes and other people listen to other people's episodes. So that sparks a conversation between podcasters as well, which is cool to see. So before we wrap this up, is there anything else to add?
Yes, Suncorp now supports Apple Pay in Australia.
Oh, what?
Yes.
When?
From today, from this morning.
Literally.
Yes.
That's awesome, and that's just off the back of, just recently Citibank as well.
Yep.
Have rolled it out. So
no. I actually recently closed quite a few accounts, particularly with Commonwealth Bank, and I was expecting them to ask me why, and I was, ready and prepared, and I just never got asked why, and I thought, well, that's weird. And then I went to ANZ to close, and I never got asked why, and it's just, I found that very weird that they just like, yep, close your account, cheers, see ya. It's like, okay.
Oh, so you switched over. You're all in on
Yes,
on Suncorp now?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. All in one area. Okay, well, I know there's a lot of Royal Banking Commission stuff going on, but please, Commonwealth, before the end of the year, please support it. I do like your apps. I like their apps, but come on.
Well, the thing about it, right, is like the Banking Commission, in light of that, the Apple Pay stance doesn't help their case because they just, they are trying to collude against Apple, which is a cornerstone of, a capitalist system is not being able to collude. And that's just like, it's just uncapitalist to do that. So, yeah.
I remember we spent the first year of Apple Size pretty much mentioning Apple Pay in Australia. I reckon it made an appearance in at least every second episode. It was really, really hot, really amongst the news at the time, and now people are still out there. People are still begging some of these major banks to switch over, and but fingers crossed still.
Yeah, well, just a reminder for everyday people is your Woolworths rewards card can go onto Apple Pay wallet, and that is really helpful because you don't actually have to it's the third card in my on my Apple Watch. I just double tap the side button and it just hold it near, and it actually recognizes that there is a Woolworths rewards card and uses that. So you don't even have to select it out of your cards list, which is really, really helpful. But anyway, that's all from me.
Yeah, I use it all the time. I used to only have a couple of things in there. Now I've got about 5 different cards because 3 of them are Apple Store gift cards. So I'm just preparing for redesigned iPad Pro. I'm ready. Don't disappoint me, Apple.
Awesome.
Okay. Thanks again for the conversation, Nick. And yes, I will catch you in episode 51.
See ya.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.